This is a personal story that relates to an unfortunate incident that happened to my son at Jessie Kaplan at Rockland Boces.
I was in a position where I felt a loss of control over my son. Actually, I'll just tell you now. He was in this Rockland Boces, a school in Rockland, where I got a call one day at work saying that something happened to my son and he's holding his wrist. He got hurt during a block. Now, keep in mind, I'm in forensic psych, so I am very used to restraints on behavioral issues, behavioral psych issues. So my son, he doesn't complain about pain, hardly ever. So for him to be holding his wrist, I knew something was wrong. And the story they were giving me was that he was during a block, and that's what happened to his wrist. So when I got there, which was an hour and a half later, I immediately took him to the emergency room. I work very far away from my son's school, so that's why it took me an hour and a half. I then took him to the emergency room where they did an x-ray. My son has a fracture. It's a fracture that's related to a fall. It's called a buccal fracture. And I specifically asked, before I came to the school, did he fall? And they said, no, he did not fall. So how does my son have a buccal fracture when the fracture is typically had when there's a huge impact to the hand? And yeah, that's how a buccal fracture happens, apparently. So for them to say that it happened during a block, I knew something was wrong. Right there at the emergency room, I was like, no, they did something to my baby. And my son doesn't talk. So, and he had a hard time communicating. I didn't know what happened to my son. So when I went to go and ask what happened to him, they said it was an accident. He was getting aggressive and they had to hold him. And I'm like, that this type of fracture is not associated with a hold. I know restraints. Something's off. This is not right. Something's not right. I wanted everything in writing, and at first they wouldn't even give me the guy's name who did it. They were very secretive. They had their established positions of control. I was just a parent asking questions. There was no cameras. There was nothing to say what happened. Keep in mind, my son has 6 children in his classroom with 4 teachers. So for nobody to see what happened doesn't make sense. The main teacher was in the bathroom, and there was only one teacher in the class. Everybody else was on lunch. How convenient. So I kept inquiring about it because I'm like, something's not right. Every time I inquired about my son, there was a different story. Oh, somebody wasn't there. And then they finally had to give me the name because I kept asking, like, who is this person? Is he still going to be in my son's class? Like, who is this person? Because honestly, like, I didn't understand. This is New York State, okay? I didn't get it. Like,
I know and work with direct caregivers.
Anything happens to a patient, mind you, my patients are patients who have been convicted of a crime or have charges, have been suspected of some type of heinous crime. My son was 6 at the time. Nobody knew what happened to my son.
Besides the teacher's assistant who was involved
Anyway.
And the main teacher who was in the bathroom. I called CPS. CPS said they didn't take these types of cases. I called the Justice Center, and the Justice Center said they don't cover schools.
And what hurts is my son doesn't talk. He can't tell me what happened. He can't say, Mommy, this person did it to me. Mommy, that person did it to me. Like, I felt like... I went to the police. Police couldn't do anything. I went to a lawyer. lawyer said that these types of things take forever and it's not even worth it. Basically wouldn't even take it. Mind you, I'm a single mom. Going to work every day, paying for my kids' childcare on my own, trying to get services for my son, which took 2 years in New York State, calling XYZ to get services. They said, oh, we're in the middle of a change. So anyway, it was just a very, very tough time because my son couldn't tell me what happened. And nobody could tell me what happened. And you're in a room where people can't even look at you in the eye to tell you what happened to your son. I made him. You have to tell me what happened.
I later learned the Justice Center was actually created for a nonverbal autistic child, but because it was in a school, they didn't look into it.
The hypocrisy of it all was so frustrating because I work for the state where if anything happens to a patient there, immediately people are called, immediately people are on investigation, immediately people are moved off the floor, and they were just sweeping this under the rug. Like, I was hurt. I can't even describe how I felt because my baby was hurt and he couldn't tell me who did it. And my baby didn't kill anybody. He didn't rape anybody. He didn't molest anybody. He didn't eat anybody. And my baby's getting worse treatment than a criminal. A criminal with psych issues. But a criminal, why aren't there cameras for children who can't speak? Why aren't there cameras? Nowhere on the bus, nowhere in school, nothing. No cameras. If something happens to your kid, oh well. They can just make up a lie. And they don't have to, no proof is needed. But where I was, everybody's moved off the ward. People's livelihood are at stake. And half the time, most of these allegations against the staff there are false. It's just patients not having anything to do. I'm sorry, I seen it with my own eyes. So I was just all over the place emotionally because my son couldn't tell me what happened to him. And to see criminals get treated better than your child, your 6-year-old child who hasn't done anything. It was hard. I said I was going to explain that story in relation to this chart.
So the Justice Centers don't cover schools, and I'm assuming it's due to the massive amount of power the teachers' unions have allocated throughout society.
The school was in a position of control. They had staff, they had everybody there to back their story.
It was heartbreaking to see my child get treated like that. And because of their well-established positions of power, they could just cover it up. And with no video proof, the way they have it at my job, and them not having to answer to the Justice Center, which was created for people like my son, they maintain that power with no investigation from any outside source.
They changed their story 3 times. First it was a block. Then my son tried to attack them. Then that's why it was a block. And then it was a block and a hold. Meanwhile, it's a buccal fracture. So there needs to be a lot of impact for that fracture to occur. And my son is not a fragile boy. They got me to a level of satisfaction.
Or anybody who wanted to look into it to a level of satisfaction.
With the 3, in my opinion, fraudulent incident reports that they gave me And that was that. There was nothing to be done. Nothing. So they achieved control. They got away with it.